The foreign ministers of China and the United States have met face-to-face for the first time. China directly advised Rubio that the way the U.S. deals with China needs to change. On July 11, Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Secretary of State Rubio held approximately an hour-long meeting in Kuala Lumpur. This marked Rubio's first face-to-face contact with Wang Yi since he assumed the position of Secretary of State on January 20 this year. After the meeting, both countries issued their own statements. China noted that Wang Yi provided a comprehensive explanation of China's principled position on U.S.-China relations and emphasized that both countries should quickly implement the important consensus reached by the heads of state. Furthermore, China urged the U.S. to view China with an objective, rational, and pragmatic attitude, aiming for peaceful coexistence and win-win cooperation when formulating its China policy, and to engage with China in an equal, respectful, and reciprocal manner. Following this, the U.S. also released its statement on the meeting. Rubio described the meeting as very constructive and positive, emphasizing the many areas where the U.S. and China can cooperate. He expressed hope that the two countries could achieve strategic stability and build mutual trust. It is reported that Rubio also revealed that if the U.S. and China can create a good atmosphere and achieve tangible success, the possibility of high-level meetings between the two sides within the year is very high. From the statements issued by both countries, China's stance is clearly firmer, and its attitude towards the U.S. is very clear. Simply put, the U.S. must not deal with China with an arrogant position of strength attitude. It must treat China as an equal and abandon its hostile, Cold War-era confrontational thinking towards China. It is well known that after Trump took office, U.S.-China relations could be described as turbulent. Trump's tariff war and technological containment severely deteriorated bilateral relations. Even before the meeting between the foreign ministers, Rubio had declared that he would focus on China's military support for Russia, and Trump also threatened new sanctions, including secondary tariffs on Russian energy exports. This was clearly intended to target the lifeline of China-Russia energy cooperation. However, after the U.S.-China foreign ministers meeting, the U.S. attitude subtly changed. Abandoning its previous hawkish anti-China stance, the hawkish Secretary of State Rubio transformed into a dove. His statements could be described as mild, and he highly praised the meeting, calling for the U.S. and China to seek common ground while reserving differences and strengthen cooperation. Notably, the U.S. also gave a positive response to the widely discussed issue of Trump's potential visit to China. Early last month, the U.S. and Chinese heads of state held a phone call. According to the White House's readout, the Chinese leader invited Trump to visit China, and Trump also extended a reciprocal invitation. According to later reports from some foreign media, China invited Trump to attend the 80th anniversary of the victory of the War of Resistance against Japanese aggression military parade to be held in Beijing on September 3, while Trump invited the Chinese leader to attend events commemorating the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, expected to be held in late September. Japanese media have also reportedly revealed that the U.S. is arranging for Trump to visit China later this year, with dozens of American CEOs. Undoubtedly, both China's military parade and the uncommemoration are important diplomatic events, but the sequence here is crucial. In the Trump 2.0 era, both China and the U.S. hope that the other country's leader will visit their own country first. If Trump can become the first U.S. president to attend such a Chinese event, then the Chinese leader might subsequently travel to New York to attend the related events for the 80th anniversary of the UN. China's communiqué this time was very brief. Issues such as Taiwan, the South China Sea, tariffs, Russia, and the Middle East were not mentioned. In less than 200 words, China's message was simple. First, the U.S. should genuinely implement the consensus of the two heads of state and follow through on its words. Second, it should handle its relations with China with an objective, rational, and pragmatic attitude. It remains to be seen if the U.S. will heed China's words this time. Back in late January this year, Foreign Minister Wang Yi had a phone call with Rubio. At that time, Wang Yi offered two pieces of advice to Rubio. A great power should act like a great power, and, I hope you will conduct yourself well. Now, 6 months have passed, and looking at the various actions of Rubio and the entire Trump administration, it seems they have not heeded China's advice. On tariff issues, the Trump administration has not only imposed high tariffs on China, but also attempted to use tariffs to force other countries to target China. In the agreement reached with Vietnam, the U.S. demanded that Vietnam impose a 40% tariff on goods transshipped through its territory, clearly targeting China's intrepid trade. It's not just Vietnam. Southeast Asian countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Laos, and Malaysia are currently facing similar situations. Trump is threatening high tariffs to demand that these countries tighten their intrepid trade policies with China. Of course, not all Southeast Asian countries are falling for the U.S. approach. Malaysian Foreign Minister Muhammad Hasan, during his meeting with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, assured China that facing issues like tariffs, Malaysia would not only consider its own interests and would not sacrifice the interests of third parties. He emphasized that in the current situation, we can clearly see who our true friends are. Clearly, the U.S., which does not act like a great power, is not a true friend in Malaysia's eyes. In fact, the U.S. also failed to act like a great power in its negotiations with Vietnam. Politico recently quoted four informed sources who reported that despite Trump's claims on social media that Vietnam had agreed to accept a 20% U.S. tariff, the Vietnamese leaders did not agree to a 20% tariff in their phone call with Trump. The sources indicated that the original tariff rate discussed between the U.S. and Vietnam was around 11, but when Trump announced the news, this figure directly became 20. Also demanding that Vietnam fully open its market to the U.S. In short, the outcome of Vietnam's negotiations with the U.S. was that Vietnam compromised with the U.S. and still had to pay high tariffs to the U.S. The Vietnamese government was clearly set up by the U.S. The fact that Vietnam agreed to such an overlord clause is astonishing. Trump's actions are undoubtedly taking advantage of the situation, completely entrapping Vietnam, which ultimately has no choice but to fulfill the relevant terms. After all, Vietnam's name is clearly recorded in black and white. Even if Vietnam now realizes it has been duped by the U.S., the die is cast, and Vietnam cannot change the situation. This is certainly not good news for Vietnam. The agreement it so desperately wanted to reach with the U.S. turns out to be even worse than the 15% tariff rates faced by countries that did not negotiate with the U.S. Anyone would feel utterly wrong. Trump's actions are being watched by all other countries worldwide. Such an undignified approach by the U.S. will only accelerate the erosion of its already dwindling credibility. It's no wonder that countries like Japan, South Korea, and India dare not reach agreements with the U.S. Who knows if Trump will turn his back the next day. As for Foreign Minister Wang Yi's other piece of advice to Rubio, I hope you will conduct yourself well. Rubio has unfortunately disappointed China. He verbally agreed that the U.S. would not support Taiwan independence, but then the U.S. State Department website immediately removed the content stating U.S. non-support for Taiwan independence. The first interaction saw a change of stance, leaving behind a dark history. Furthermore, Rubio at the time repeatedly claimed that the U.S. was willing to work with China to properly handle differences, manage bilateral relations in a mature and prudent manner, and jointly address global challenges. Yet, the Trump administration then immediately ignited a global tariff war, targeting China, with the highest tariffs on Chinese goods, an attitude suggesting it had no intention of doing business. If not for China's strong countermeasures, the U.S. would probably not have called for a truce so quickly. The U.S. neither properly handled U.S.-China differences nor greatly disrupted the international economic order, revealing its true colors to the world. China's invitation for Trump to visit and Foreign Minister Wang Yi's agreement to meet Rubio are precisely because we have seen through the true nature of the Trump administration and mastered a set of methodologies for dealing with it. We have a firm grasp on when to call it quits and when to take proactive action. Foreign Minister Wang Yi's meeting with Rubio is tantamount to giving the U.S. a small taste of success, which can keep Trump on the hook and prevent the U.S. from becoming desperate. This is similar to the Ministry of Commerce approving U.S. rare earth export applications, but not releasing them all at once. You eat your food one bite at a time, you do things one step at a time, and you walk one step at a time. The U.S.-China Foreign Ministers meeting is just one step before the U.S. President's visit to China. It is a big step forward, but there is still a way to go before Trump visits China. Next, if the U.S. President wants his wish to come true, he must act according to China's demands, continuously enhance bilateral consensus, reduce misunderstandings, and promote healthy, stable, and sustainable development of U.S.-China economic and trade relations. This requires the U.S. to stop playing dirty tricks on China and stop harming China's core interests. Currently, whether it's the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioning 18 Chinese companies or the U.S. demanding that South Korea and other countries adopt measures to restrict China in tariff negotiations, these all contradict U.S.-China agreements and require Trump to correct his mistakes promptly to ensure a smooth visit to China. In summary, the U.S. may appear fierce, but it's actually a paper tiger. China has mastered the rhythm and initiative in U.S.-China interactions. Surprisingly, despite China's strict regulations and prohibitions on the rare earth industry, an unexpected situation has occurred. Over the past year, it has been exposed that large quantities of rare earths have been flowing continuously to the United States through third countries, likely ending up with U.S. military enterprises. Who is behind this operation? China has already introduced measures, and how can this situation be eradicated in the future? The rare earth issue previously left the U.S. scratching its head. It's no exaggeration. Their lifeline is in China's hands. Previously, because U.S. companies ignored China's warnings and repeatedly pushed for arms sales to Taiwan, coupled with the Biden administration's increasingly strict chip control policies against China, in July and December last year, China's Ministry of Commerce twice announced controls on gallium-Ga and germanium-G related dual-use items, prohibiting their export to the. This was equivalent to closing the door on the U.S. Not long after, the U.S. issued a rare earth inventory warning. The Pentagon even considered recycling waste to extract gallium and germanium to urgently supply these materials. Gallium and germanium are generally unfamiliar to non-related industries, but these rare earth refined products are widely used in electronic components, semiconductor materials, and military fields, and the demand is huge. For example, the airborne radar of the U.S. F-35 fighter jet requires gallium arsenide GAAs devices, and electronic warfare systems also need gallium-based materials. Its infrared identification system requires cesium, and aircraft communication facilities also cannot do without cesium-related compounds. It can be said that the U.S. is deeply dependent on Chinese rare earths. The U.S. currently has hundreds of F-35 orders backlog, plus other products that also urgently need rare earths. Therefore, after China's control, as long as the U.S. cannot import them, their arms sales path will be difficult to navigate. The U.S. has also tried to develop its rare earth industry independently, but this path has been difficult. The reason is not environmental pollution, as some rumors suggest, but rather that China's rare earth refining technology is so advanced, and its efficiency and output are so high, that any company attempting to compete can only sell at a loss. As a result, capital has lost interest in pursuing competition, leading to business closures. In the past few years, the U.S. has tried to go the appropriation route, meaning the government specifically provides funds for support. Now, several years later, the number of rare earth refining industries that the U.S. can put into production is still very small. The latest survey data this year shows that 83.7% of U.S. rare earth depends on China. This indicates that despite years of the U.S. clamoring to break its dependence, there has been no progress whatsoever. However, all parties quickly noticed something abnormal. Late last year, the Pentagon, which reportedly had no gallium or germanium inventory, was still conducting all arms sales orders normally this year. U.S. foreign aid also did not stop. There was no indication of any rare earth shortage. From another perspective, currently, only China's production capacity for gallium and germanium can meet U.S. demand, so there is no possibility of them importing from third countries or having self-production and self-marketing channels. So, where did the rare earths for the U.S. military industry come from? On July 9, Reuters published a set of data showing that large quantities of Chinese-controlled rare earths are continuously flowing to the United States from third countries. This data indicates that from December last year to April this year, the U.S. imported a total of 3,834 tons of controlled antimony trioxide from third countries. This is even more than the total for the previous 2 or 3 years combined. A company executive told British media that he can still get about 200 kilograms of gallium from China every month, but he refused to disclose the channel through which he obtains the products. He only stated that in international procurement, these rare earth raw materials are generally packaged as iron, zinc, or other materials, and as long as the buyer and seller tacitly understand, transshipment can proceed normally. If the report is true, it means that these rare earths controlled by China are not only still being sold normally to the US, but are actually being supplied in excess, allowing US military companies to stock up significantly. Undoubtedly, this incident has a very significant impact on us because they have bought 3 years' worth of products in 5 months. Even if the supply is truly cut off in the future, the impact will not be significant. No wonder the Pentagon hasn't cried out in pain after China's long period of control, which is a big difference from the immediate industry shock in the US when China controlled heavy rare earth exports this year. From the third countries mentioned in the report, the US mainly imports Chinese rare earths from Mexico and Thailand. One of these countries is China's overland trade partner, and the other is a Pacific shipping transit hub. This suggests that the rare earths may be directly transported from ports to Southeast Asian regions and then delivered to the US via air transport or by being mixed with products and sea exports under the guise of selling ordinary metals to Mexico, thus smuggling rare earths out of the country. After all, the 200 kilograms of gallium that the US company reportedly imported would be insignificant on a cargo ship carrying tens of thousands of tons, making it easy to smuggle out. Therefore, source control is crucial. The profit motive in related industries is the main reason. After China's control, the price of metals like gallium, for example, doubled in a short period. Some rare metals saw a tenfold increase, and supply fell short of demand. Driven by such high profits, some individuals are naturally willing to take risks. However, at this stage, China is implementing measures to strictly control the current situation of rare earth smuggling. In May this year, multiple departments, including the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Public Security, and the Ministry of State Security, jointly cracked down on the smuggling of strategic minerals like rare earths. In addition to prosecuting criminals, they will also thoroughly investigate the illegal entities and smuggling networks behind the scenes, find the organizations behind them, and after curbing the smuggling trend, there has already been significant improvement. Now, relying solely on port inspections to catch smuggling is no longer effective. To truly plug the loopholes, we must start from the source at the mines. The recent closed-door meeting of 7 ministries and commissions in Shenzhen set 3 tough measures, directly aimed at blocking the targets. First, source lockdown. In the future, all strategic resources, such as gallium, germanium, and rare earths, must be electronically tagged when extracted from mines. The entire process of transportation, storage, and export will be recorded. The flow of goods will be traceable online, making it easy to investigate. Second, target the entire chain and the masterminds. It's not just about fines anymore. Previously, if smuggling was caught, there might just be a fine. Now, it's different. From front companies to behind-the-scenes manipulators, from label workers to financial flows, everything will be investigated thoroughly and handled as ironclad cases, leading to sentencing and public exposure. Third, rely on technology for proliferation control. Relying on human checks is inefficient. AI is needed. In the future, a big data system will be integrated to monitor which countries and companies suddenly have abnormal import and export volumes. The system will immediately issue warnings upon analysis, like a sudden go speaker on the road that you can't dodge no matter how fast you run. But even with domestic loopholes plugged, the external defense line cannot be relaxed. Americans are already playing by the rules to block you. For example, if they suspect a batch of goods was transshipped from China to Vietnam and then exported, they directly impose tariffs on Vietnamese products, effectively crippling the transshipment channel. We can actually learn from this and sign agreements and set red lines for transit countries like Thailand and Mexico that help whitewash identities. If you act as a laundering center, China will cut your rare earth quotas and sanction your entire supply chain. Whoever cooperates will be penalized. Even tougher measures need to be elevated to international platforms. We can promote a ban on mineral transshipment to circumvent controls at the WTO, making it a rule. Once written into the provisions, goods laundered in free trade zones would all become illegal. Only when their warehouses are stuck with unsold goods will the U.S. military industry truly panic. Ultimately, this isn't about who shouts loudest. It's about who is better prepared. The U.S. wants to achieve self-sufficiency, but their rare earth production in 2025 will only be around 1,000 tons, while ours is 138,000 tons. They started late, have high costs, and weak technology. They simply can't compare. From the current perspective, China's newly promulgated rare earth export licensing system is also a way to control rare earth smuggling from the source. By registering downstream enterprises, it achieves a one license, one export system that can grasp the accurate quantity of rare earth transactions. With the nation's emphasis and strong law enforcement crackdown through special operations, rare earth smuggling cases will undoubtedly decrease in the future, and the control of rare earth exports will become increasingly effective.